Hello, my wild friends. Welcome back to the Wildly Different podcast. I'm Anna Urban. I'm the founder of Untamed, and I am so glad that you're here. If you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple, go and check out my YouTube channel right now because in this very episode, I am wearing a top that is so dang cute. You gotta go and see it. It is so cute and so on brand, and I'm only wearing it for this episode. That is how committed I am. No, but really, it is actually really uncomfortable and I cannot wait to take it off. Okay, getting into personal shares today. Today's episode is a really personal one because I am taking you behind the scenes of one of the hardest decisions that I have ever had to make for my family. But even more than that, I want to show you what it actually looks like to move through big, messy life moments with emotional resilience. Not perfectly, not without fear, doubt, or second guessing, but with awareness, with compassion, with steadiness inside of you to keep going, even when the path isn't clear. I've never recorded a podcast episode like this before, but it's always been really important to me to lead with transparency, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the truth is, your emotions are powerful. And when you don't have a grounded relationship with them, when you let them run the show, they can take you out. They can hijack your day, your decision-making, even your sense of self. But when you build the capacity to feel without spiraling, everything changes. And you and I both know that that is easier said than done. And that is exactly why I'm recording this episode. This episode is really about recognizing the pivotal emotional moments that shape us, that shape our story. The moments where everything in you wants to shut down, overanalyze, numb, push through, and instead choosing to pause, to get curious, and to stay present. Because resilience isn't about pushing harder. It's about learning to hold more, to feel more, and to still move forward. So, if regulating your emotions in real time is something you struggle with, if you often find yourself spinning, overthinking, coming up with endless worst case scenarios, if you find yourself stuck in guilt or confusion or perfectionism, I have something coming that is going to completely change how you relate to your inner world. This is like a real life Inside Out. I freaking love that movie. It is an incredible movie. So make sure that you listen all the way through to the end. Let's get into it. Before I dive into the story, I want to talk about something I've started to call a pivotal emotional moment. These are the moments in your life when your emotions get loud. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's shame, guilt, confusion, embarrassment, and you're standing at this fork in the road. You can either let those emotions drive the car, or you can pause. You can pay attention and choose a different response. Pivotal emotional moments are the ones that you look back on and think, that's when everything started to shift. That's when I started either shrinking or growing. Again, there's that fork in the road. What will you make of this emotion? These pivotal emotional moments are when you see what you're really made of. The hard part is we don't usually recognize them when we're in the moment, right? In the moment, it just feels like a mess. It feels like you're doing something wrong. But when you have the tools and the awareness to spot these moments as they're happening rather than after they've already happened, that's when they become your biggest teachers. They become your greatest messengers. They're the doorway to resilience, to alignment, to self-trust. All of your actions are rooted in an emotion. From the positive ones to the negative ones to the neutral ones, literally all of them. Whether you scroll on your phone, that is because of an emotion. Whether you eat a cheeseburger is because of an emotion. When you snap at your kids or when you speak to them kindly with respect, those are all from your emotions. If you're not feeling something, you're sleeping. You are still feeling things when you're sleeping. You get my point. Okay, today, I want to walk you through a few of my own pivotal emotional moments so that you can start noticing yours and hopefully see some parallels. So, once upon a time, so very, very long ago, no, where it all started was for the past few years, since around 2021, I've been seriously considering homeschooling my kids. If you've been following me for a while, you might already know that I was a public school teacher for over a decade. So even just thinking about leaving the traditional system, the traditional education system, and homeschooling felt like a massive identity shift. Massive. This was my first pivotal emotional moment in this story. The first big set of emotions I had to work through was embarrassment, fear of judgment, fear of being left out, and guilt. The theme of 2023 for Anna Urban was embarrassment. If my 2023 was a book, the title would be Anna Makes Peace with Everyone Possibly Judging Her at All Times. I worked through a lot of embarrassment that year, and homeschooling was one of the catalysts that I used to work through it. If any other homeschoolers are listening to this, maybe this won't resonate with you. Hopefully it will. But I definitely was the person that had this like internalized belief that homeschooling was weird. Okay? I did. I grew up knowing absolutely zero homeschoolers. Like I didn't even know that that was a thing. I didn't until I got to college and I met my first homeschooled friend. He actually invited me. I was his date to the ROTC ball. Okay? He was a very sweet kid. I was beyond that though. I had no experience, no interaction with homeschooling. And I was very scared of what people might think, about what my old coworkers might think, about what my family members would say, what my neighbors might say. More on that in just a minute. I was worried about being that weird mom. I'm really lucky to live in a neighborhood where I'm pretty close with my neighbors. Some of them are like my closest friends. There's a lot of us, like 12 young families just on our street. There are more, in the bigger neighborhood, but just on our street, there's 12 young families, and our kids are all around the same age. So just in my daughter's age group, there are 5 kids in the same grade, and they all started kindergarten this year, except for my daughter Marina. I knew that I wanted to wait on the public school thing, especially with her being so young. But I also wasn't ready to fully jump into homeschooling. My business was just taking off. I was finally gaining traction. My kids were old enough to go to school, but still, we wanted to dip our toes in. So we ended up sending our kids to an alternative farm school that only meets 4 days a week. So we have Fridays off. We all have Fridays off. And so in a way, it's been this like gentle bridge between traditional school and full-on homeschooling. And it gave me space to try something different without having to go all in. It also gave me the space to process my embarrassment. In the years leading up to this, all of my neighborhood friends, all of my mainstream friends would ask me about kindergarten plans for Marina, and I would always give them this like vague non-answer. And that's when I realized that this was embarrassment, that I was feeling embarrassed about sharing my plans. I felt really comfortable talking about it with my fellow homeschool friends, of course, but I never brought it up to my other friends. Like I avoided it. And I felt like I was living this double life, and that made it really difficult. But over time, I learned to process my emotions, to sit with them rather than rationalize them, avoid them, or suppress them. And so over the course of 2023 and 2024, I became much more comfortable sharing my plans with other people. I even talked about it publicly on social media. I'm sure I've mentioned it on the podcast a couple times that I was considering homeschooling. And the embarrassment was still there, but to a much lesser degree. That embarrassment was also met with conviction. I felt a lot of conviction about my decision. It didn't make the embarrassment go away, but because I was making room for conviction, for intentionality, the embarrassment wasn't stealing the show. It wasn't in the driver's seat anymore. Okay. Pat on the back for embarrassment. Woohoo! Okay. Next pivotal moment was grief. When I first moved to this street, we moved in a month before Marina was born, and I made friends right away. Again, really lucky that everybody was so friendly, everybody was always outside. 3 of us had our babies within a month of each other. And these were like you know what it's like. If you're a mom, especially your first baby, you need other people in it with you. We did the mommy and me classes, at the hospital. We did everything together. We went on walks. We all had our maternity leave together. we became really close. And so I romanticized this future of our babies all going to school together and being best buds. This was like such a huge part of my reality. I loved this community that we had built. And so the more I considered homeschooling as a serious option, the older my kids got, the more I realized that this might not be our reality, at least not for a while, right? And that's when grief showed up. Every time I saw the other neighborhood kids playing together outside after school, I would feel this little pang of sadness. I would feel guilt. Whenever I saw the kids walking home from school with their moms, it would bubble up again, right? I was driving them 30 minutes back and forth to this farm school when I could be walking them right down the street, right? And they were also missing out on these friendships that they could be making. Well, my daughter, anyway, my son is too young to go to school. He's only 4, but my daughter, who would have been in kindergarten. So it was grief. It was a lot of grief for a vision that I had to let go of. Here's the thing. What I did with this grief is very important, because this is where things start to go sideways for people, is they try to logic their way out of their emotions. And I didn't do that. I didn't logic my way out of my emotions. I didn't try to make myself feel better by trashing public school. Okay, I did a little bit of that. I did do a little bit of that, but it really didn't help. Okay, I also didn't try to convince myself that I was making a better choice. That would have been emotional bypassing. That would have been emotional bypassing. I know that there's pros and cons to both options, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute. Instead, I let the grief be there. I gave it space. And it was honestly one of the hardest, but the most transformative things that I did. It would take 30 seconds a day, a minute, just to notice it, to breathe into it, to let it exist. There were a bunch of other things that I did to process this grief that I will get into in just a bit. So the thing about grieving is there's a very real part of me, a very real part of me that wanted to be seen, that wanted to be heard. That is what allowed me to move forward without turning public school into the enemy, or without turning my friends, like my real good friends, into them, right? Or the others. I still reminded myself of the positives of homeschooling, of course. I talked about it with my homeschool friends. I explored different options, different scenarios. I imagined different futures without catastrophizing, right? I didn't spiral into Marina's gonna be the weird kid, right? That would be territory that wouldn't serve me. The truth is, when I looked at it objectively, the truth is our neighborhood kids are lovely. They're lovely, right? That kind of fear wasn't grounded in reality. But again, logic wasn't going to get me out of feeling the grief. This is why this moment was so pivotal for my growth as a person and as a leader, because I could have shut down the embarrassment and the grief. I could have made a decision based on optics, on comfort, on staying safe. But emotional resilience, this process that I teach inside of Untamed, this process that I live on the daily, helped me to pause and feel those emotions instead of performing around them. Some of the things that I did in this scenario was I asked myself, where is this embarrassment coming from? I teach inside of my program the Untamed Freedom Formula, and that is what it's all about. It's about getting curious. Where is this embarrassment coming from? What am I making it mean about me? What can I learn from holding this embarrassment? What can I learn from holding this grief? And through a lot of introspection, through a lot of just somatic work, I realized embarrassment shows up because I'm doing something bold. I'm doing something out of the ordinary, something that challenges my past self, something that might not make sense to other people, but it makes sense to me. And maybe you feel this way too. Maybe you're experiencing embarrassment about a decision right now. Maybe you feel like the outcast or the other, or maybe that's how you feel. Maybe that's just like a general feeling that you have in your friend group, not about any particular decision, but just in general. Like you kind of feel like the weird one, the different one, either in your friend group or in your family or at work. I want you to think about these questions. What am I making this mean about me? What's the story here? What aspects of this are rooted in reality? right? What am I meant to take away from this? And if you're experiencing grief is a very important human experience that is necessary for closure. It is absolutely necessary. You cannot move past grief. You have to move through it. Again, this was the first pivotal emotional moment where I chose emotional resilience over emotional avoidance in this story. I didn't rush the decision. I didn't shove the feelings down. I let them teach me. Okay, so that was 2023-ish, 2024. And so now this year, 2025, as the school year started drawing to a close, I started to get worried about next school year for a totally different set of reasons and a totally different set of emotions. So I realized that I had 4 options on the table: homeschool, public school, farm school, where my kids currently are, and leadership school. This is a brand new program that is opening up in my state, and it's a big focus on building life skills and independence and leadership and building strong families. I'm really obsessed with their whole motto, their whole mantra. So each of these came with major pros and major cons. Major cons, okay? With public school, it's close. It's free. It's free. It's convenient. It's structured. It's part of our community, but it's very regimented. And there's a lot of things that I don't particularly like about public school. It's a beautiful option for so many people, but it's very regimented. It's very indoors. It's very one size fits all. And believe me, this is coming from a former public school teacher. I wish that it were perfect, but it's not. And that's the reality for every situation, right? And so I saw that there were other options out there, and I wanted to try. I wanted to experiment with them. Okay, so option 2 is farm school. This is where we are now. It's outdoorsy, it's imaginative, it's filled with just the best teachers. If you've seen the movie Matilda, the old one, Miss Honey, literally this school is 3 Miss Honeys. 3 Miss Honeys. How did we get so lucky? They're so kind, and they're so they just love to be in nature. It's very Waldorf, very just beautiful. It's such a beautiful program. But the thing is, they're actually going to be expanding next year, and so they're not going to have a building. They're building out a barn, and so it's possible that it's going to be very chaotic. It's not going to be. It might not be super organized. So I love the values, but I had concerns that it wasn't going to be academically rigorous enough, especially for Marina, who is 6. She's going to be technically entering 1st grade. She turns 7 in January, and she's still learning how to read, but at a much slower pace. It's at a much slower pace, which is what they're all about. And I started wondering whether she was getting the instruction that she needed. Of course, if you have the choice to read or to, make a bracelet, what do you think a 6-year-old girl is going to choose, right? I was concerned about whether she was getting enough exposure to academics. And this is what I was so torn about is with public school, it's they're getting too much. They're getting too much of that. A 6-year-old doesn't need to be doing all that for 6 hours a day. But at the farm school, I was worried that maybe there wasn't enough. Okay, so I thought, what about homeschool, man? I could control how much academic rigor there was. I could control how much, outdoor time she got, all right? Okay? I talked about it for years. I romanticized it. And honestly, I thought I would be amazing at it. I used to be a teacher. When I was a kid, I used to play teacher. That was the game. My game of choice that I would play was teacher. I knew how to plan out curriculum. I had the experience. I love project-based learning. I love getting creative. On paper, it sounded like a dream. I would get to spend so much time with my kids and go on adventures. Okay. So in March of this year, 2025, I decided to do a little test run. Okay? Since we have Fridays off, I did a little homeschool soft launch, Fridays and weekends. And it only took a couple weeks to realize I really don't like this. I don't like it. I don't like homeschooling. That was the second pivotal emotional moment in this journey because there was a lot of grief and a lot of disappointment baked into that realization. I felt really let down by the vision that I had built up in my head. I had imagined this beautiful, outdoorsy, flexible life with my kids. I imagined, me running my business and also homeschooling. And I realized that it wasn't going to happen, right? I felt really overwhelmed. I felt really irritated. I also realized that in order to do homeschool right, you got to do it full time. And I run a business that I really love. More on that in just a minute. But homeschooling is a full-time job. It's a full-time job. So there was this wave of self-doubt, wait a minute, shouldn't I be good at this? Shouldn't this light me up? Right? I thought my teaching background would give me a head start, but I didn't anticipate just how much pressure I'd put on myself to do it right. That was part of it, but it wasn't the whole thing. Yes, my perfectionism kicked in hard, but the worst part is I just really didn't enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy being her teacher and her mom. It wasn't energizing. It was draining. For me, I know that this isn't the case for a lot of homeschool moms, but for me, I actually really enjoy the separation, right? And that's okay. That gets to be okay. But that's what made this moment so pivotal because it was another fork in the road. I could have forced myself to keep going, to prove that I could do it, right? But instead, I let myself feel the disappointment, the disillusionment. And that's what helped me get honest about what actually works for me and for my family. Again, this was also a huge moment for me to process grief of the reality that wasn't going to be most likely, right? Grief that I had made this thing up in my head. I had talked about it to so many people. First of all, I got over the embarrassment. I started telling people that I was going to homeschool, right? It's I overcame this emotion, and now it's psych, I'm actually not going to homeschool, but it's neither here nor there. I grew from that experience, and then I had to process the grief of well, actually, maybe this isn't for me. Okay. Then came pivotal emotional moment number 3. Quickly after that. Are we on number 3, number 4? It doesn't matter. Okay. There was the realization of crippling guilt that came from me realizing that homeschooling wasn't right. It brought on this emotional wave of, wow, Anna, you're choosing your business over your family. That was the voice inside my head, okay? Not very helpful. Because saying no to homeschooling didn't just feel like a scheduling choice. It felt like a values choice. And I really wrestled with that. I had to face the part of me that said, a good mom would sacrifice more. A good mom would choose her kids no matter what. But emotional resilience doesn't mean ignoring guilt. It means letting it rise, holding it with compassion and asking, what is this really about? What is this really about? I cried a whole heck of a lot. I'm shocked I didn't drown in the month of April. I cried a lot. I really, really sat with this guilt and I cried and I cried and I cried. And once I was done crying, I got curious. When I dug deeper, I saw a shadow belief. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough mom. I'm not a good enough mom unless I give up everything else. And through processing this emotion, I learned that belief is not mine. That belief is inherited. That belief is cultural. That belief is conditioning. It's also just not true. But again, you can't logic your way out of any emotion. There are infinite reasons why I continue to run my business, and they're all good reasons. One of my biggest is I genuinely love to help people. My business pours into me, and because of that, I'm able to pour more into my kids. So yes, even though it does take me away from my kids, it does take away time from my kids, it takes away, again, the opportunity of homeschooling, it also gives me energy. It gives me purpose. And even though I make mistakes in parenting and in business, lots of them, for the most part, having that outlet in my life allows me to be a better parent. Another big reason my business is important to me is financial. And honestly, this is a really big one. And it's one that I realized through this pivotal moment. Freedom is one of my core values, and my business gives me freedom that I would not have otherwise. Not the financial freedom that you're thinking of, okay? I'm not like Scrooge McDuck swimming in money. No. I watched my mom stay financially dependent on my dad for their entire marriage. And it's a complicated thing, but I saw how much she suffered because of it, especially later in life. And that left a huge imprint on me. It left a huge imprint, like to witness that as a child and then later as an adult when I had my own kids. So it's technically not necessary for me to work right now. We're very blessed in that way. But there's a deep sense of safety and sovereignty in making my own money. And beyond that, it's not just about money. I love the work that I do. It gives me purpose. It keeps me growing. And I believe deeply that benefits my kids. But again, knowing that logically didn't mean that the guilt was any easier to process. Your emotions are not logical. They're literally emotional. You can't logic your way out of your emotions. And this is, again, deeply, deeply personal. Just because I was feeling this way doesn't mean that you would feel this way or that everybody should feel this way. This is not me judging full-time moms. This is a part of my story. One of my very, very close friends who homeschools has the complete opposite story of mine, and completely, she struggles with the same emotions, but for totally different reasons. Her mom worked full-time growing up and she felt like she was never around. So for that reason, she homeschools because she wants to correct for that, right? So that's what feels aligned for her. We all have very unique reasons for why we do what we do, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't make one choice better than the other. It just is what is needed in your story. And it would be wrong of me to ignore my very real experience, or for her to ignore her very real experience and the emotions that she has because of it. So after getting curious, after accepting, I was willing to draw a line in the sand and say, you know what? It's okay that this guilt is here, but it is actually not serving me. And I do not have to act on it. I'm not abandoning my family. I'm modeling what it looks like to honor your calling and your tiny humans. That is why this third pivotal moment mattered so much. It was an invitation to release guilt and replace it with some clarity. Again, the guilt was still there, but I was creating some space for clarity, to remember what my values are: freedom, discovery, creativity, wisdom. That's what was guiding me in this journey. And the more that I can own those values, the more that I can let go of the guilt and trust the path that I am working towards. Okay, so this is the part of the story where everything starts to swirl because none of the options were clearly right. None of the options were clearly like, this is the one, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Each one brought up very real concerns, and I found myself caught up in this fog of indecision. So that brings me to emotional checkpoint number 4 or 5, okay? Indecision and doubt. After realizing that homeschooling wasn't gonna work for us, I was left with 3 options: public school, farm school, and leadership school. And none of them felt like a clear yes. Again, with public school, it's literally down the street. It's convenient. It's free. It's a part of the community that I spent years building. But again, not a big fan of the structure, the indoor time. It felt like a lot of pressure for a 6-year-old who thrives in freedom and movement. The image of her spending most of her day indoors was really hard for me to swallow. Okay, I've gone over that. Then there's farm school, where she currently is. Love the program, love the teachers, love our Miss Honeys. I love how much time they get to spend outside. They're learning through play, through curiosity. But one of my concerns is that next year is going to be a little chaotic and that it might not be rigorous enough. It's a mixed age group. And then there's leadership school. And this is a brand new option that kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't really entertain it as an option because it's so far away, but their whole mission is to build independent, resilient leaders. They use a 2-hour learning model that incorporates AI for personalized academic instruction, and then they spend the rest of the day doing physical movement and project-based learning and life skills. On paper, it is absolutely amazing, but it's also really far. It's really far, over an hour in the morning because of traffic. That's a big ask. And Louie, goodness gracious. And I do have some concerns with the AI thing. AI is cool. AI is cool. Lulu's throwing me off track. AI is cool in theory, but is my 6-year-old really going to be on a computer every single day, right? And then there's like the practical thing of like, who's Louis J. Stevenson? Fine, quiet on the set. Okay, who's teaching her handwriting? Will she get the support that she needs beyond the tech? Okay, so I was sitting with all these very real concerns, right? And with all of these 3 options, they had serious trade-offs, okay? Too rigid, not rigorous enough, too far, too uncertain. And that's when this pivotal moment hit. Indecision and doubt. Because the thing is, I didn't just feel stuck. I felt like I was failing. Like it felt like a situation where it was like, damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? I kept thinking like, there has to be a right answer. There has to be the perfect choice. There has to be the best choice, right? I pro-conned lists till my fingers fell off, right? Like I kept second guessing, spinning, researching, polling friends, flipping back and forth. And what I learned through that experience is that when I get stuck in indecision, it's almost never about the actual options. It's about my discomfort with not knowing, with not being perfect, with not being able to control the outcome. Indecision is just fear dressed up as logic. So what helped me to move through this wasn't more information. It was, again, going back to the tools that I share inside of Untamed and on this podcast. I paused. I stopped spiraling. I let myself feel the doubt instead of racing to escape it. I grounded myself. I used what I call my 5-minute resets, 5-minute mind resets to come back to a state of ease and self-trust. I reflected on my core values, freedom, discovery, creativity, wisdom, and I asked myself, which option gets us closest to living with those values, even if it's not perfect? Because that's what it comes down to, not perfection, but alignment. And when I looked at the decision through that lens, what aligned with my values, our rhythms as a family, our reality, I was able to make a much more clear-headed decision, right? And I'll be honest, it still doesn't feel perfect. It never will. It never will. But what I realized was that I was waiting for a decision to feel completely safe rather than creating that safety within myself. Let me say that again. I was waiting for a decision to make me feel safe rather than looking for that safety within myself. That's ultimately what this was about, safety, right? Instead of looking for the right answer, I focused on building self-trust that no matter what choice I made, that I would have my own back. I would have my family's back, right? That's ultimately what this was calling me to do. So I chose the leadership school. I chose that one. I was the most lit up by that one. Yes, I'm concerned about the commute, but also we talked to the director. He's wonderful, so incredible. I'm really excited to work with him. And we have 3 months to test it out to see, like, if the commute is really too much, like, we can part ways and it's, it's no big deal. I'm not like locked into a contract, but I really do want it to work out. Okay. Even though it's far, even though I still have reservations, even though I know it's going to stretch us, it's what's most aligned for now. Okay. So this brings me to something that I'm very excited to share. On May 20th and 22nd, I'm hosting a live 2-day workshop called How to Build Emotional Resilience and Stop Second Guessing, Start Moving Forward. Early bird registration is officially open, and yes, it's intentionally affordable, but it's not free because I want you to show up for yourself like this actually matters, because it does. This isn't fluff. This is the foundation. I'm going to walk you through all of the tools that I have learned as a coach, as a mother, as a human, as the founder of Untamed. If you have ever felt hijacked by your emotions, if you tend to freeze, to spiral, to overanalyze, or to make choices from guilt instead of grounded clarity, this workshop is going to shift everything. I am calling in leaders, mothers and fathers who are building strong families, who want to have ownership and mastery over their emotions, not to numb them or suppress them. We're going to go deep into how to spot your pivotal emotional moments in real time to regulate without bypassing and to start building self-trust. It's going to be iconic. It's 2 days, it's live, there's Q&A, and it will change the way that you relate to your emotions for good. You'll find all the details in the show notes, and if you are an Untamed member, this is already included in your membership, so no need to grab a ticket if you're already in Untamed. Just check the calendar for your link. For everyone else, you can save your seat at the link down below, and if you're on the fence, just ask yourself, what might change if I started responding instead of reacting? Thanks for being here. Thanks for going through this with me. I know that listening to this story probably brought up a lot of feelings for you. And so I want to encourage you to be with them, to just sit with them for even 30 seconds. Just let them exist in your body. Sometimes it even helps to picture them like physically take up space, like a light, right? I'll talk to you soon. And as always, stay wild.